a returning guest on popular demand, my Captain Chandran.
Hey, Karish.
As a pilot, you've been flying since 1998.
My mom and dad got me this little jumbo jet.
He also has the box it came in.
For there you have been, and there you long to return.
You being a poet today.
The takeoff and landing is the most tricky part.
People don't realize pilots and their homes. You guys are gone a lot.
I know it. I don't think it changes my love for flying.
All of us want to avoid turbulence.
I use this rule of thumb. If it feels like a train, it's okay. If it gets a little more bumpy, then definitely it's better to be strapped in.
You guys work under high pressure environment.
Yes, we will make split-second decisions in that airplane, but I'll go to Spinneys and stand in front of the ice cream aisle wondering which one to pick.
When you meet someone who's not from the world of flying, what is the first thing you get asked?
Do you get free tickets?
And do you? Can pilots just hand out buddy tickets? This and many other pertinent questions will be answered today on this episode of Hey Karish. Welcome back, and I hope you've been enjoying the episodes we've been putting out. We've got some incredible guests lined up in the weeks to come, but today we have a returning guest on popular demand, Captain Chandran, my Captain Chandran. Welcome back, darling.
Hey, Karish.
Hey! And today we're bringing you back in your professional capacity as a pilot. You've been flying since 1998 when you had just turned 18.
Yes, that's right.
Tell us about you at the airport, because that's a story I've heard you tell many times and I love listening to it. So you were 17?
I left home when I was 17. I landed on my 18th birthday, and new place, new country with a new dream. And all thanks to my folks, mom and dad were supportive at the right time. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Amma and Appa.
And from there it was just all onwards and upwards.
So you traveled from where to where? Tell us.
We were living in Doha at that time. And I remember I flew British Airways via London and landed in Phoenix, Arizona. I thought it was something so special. I sat in the cockpit. Back then this was pre 9/11, so we were allowed to visit the flight deck. So I sat in the cockpit for the takeoff and the landings, and it was just mind-blowing. So it was the beginning of my journey in that flight deck.
And the beginning of your dream to be a pilot someday. That goes way back to when you were how old?
I was 7 years old, I remember. And I was living in Sharjah at that time.
Here in the UAE?
Yes, here in the UAE. My mom and dad got me this little jumbo jet, which was my first airplane toy, which I still have.
And he also has the box it came in, and it's in really bad shape, but he
Yeah.
refuses to put away the box. But yes, continue.
So that's when it all started. And at that time, I think it's like you're so young, you want to be everything. I wanted to be an auto rickshaw driver too. So we were just having fun, I think. And at some point along the way, it became something that I really just wanted to do. And there's no turning back from there.
The time that we spent together, we could be having the most, detailed conversations, deep conversations about, what's going on with our lives. Or I could be frustrated about something that's happened and I could be sharing it with Chandran. But if there's an airplane flying across the sky at that point, too bad for me and my story, because Chandran's gone. He's like, plane. Every single time you see a plane, tell us what goes on in your mind.
It's every pilot. That's how it is. When once you've flown, there's a very famous saying as well, which says that, once you've tasted flight, you walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward, and that's just how it is for all of us. For there you have been, and there you long to return.
Look at you being a poet today. Now, I know that you have many a times gone up on the rooftop just to see planes taking off and landing. That's one of your favorite sights to enjoy. But when you're actually flying a plane, do you have a favorite part of the job, or is it all the same for you?
Favorite part, definitely the landing, because it's the most challenging. The environment is constantly changing. So that's the favorite part, no doubt. It's also the most challenging. I think the takeoff and landing is always the most challenging. So we definitely switch off from everything else that's happening in the world and just focus on that particular takeoff and that particular landing until we have stopped and parked at the gate. So that's my favorite part.
My favorite part is when you're like, I'm on my way home. That.
That happens when I'm leaving the hotel only.
Yeah, it begins for you. So when you check out of the hotel, you're already like, okay, that's it. I'm heading home. I'm heading home.
Yes.
It's tough, isn't it, to be gone as much as you are.
Yes, it is, but you learn to cope with it because you're physically gone, but mentally you're still in more than one place. So, there's lots happening inside your head. And if you're able to remotely sort of assist with things that are happening back home, then we'll try and do that. And your heart is at home at the end of the day.
This, I think, is possibly something that a lot of people don't realize about pilots and their homes is that, you guys are gone a lot and your families are pretty much, functioning. They're doing everyday events, they're doing school things, special days, or parent teacher meetings, or there's birthdays, family gatherings. All of that continues to happen. And you're, coming and going, coming and going. We talked about the last time about your rosters and how you can't really plan way into the future. You can only plan about a month ahead. Did you know about these things before you got into flying? And had you known them, would you have still chosen flying?
I had no idea, because these are the things that they don't tell you before you start the job. And also, it depends from airline to airline, it's very different. So, it's not something we talk about much at that stage. But I mean, now that I know it, I don't think it changes my love for flying. I still love it and it's my passion. So, yeah, I'm just happy that I'm in a place where I do have a roster and I can plan my days ahead. I'm still waiting to do some things like you said, we miss out on our kids' performances and etc. So, those days they will come one day. So we just keep trying.
So I know we've been together and you've been asked, are you a pilot or a co-pilot? So there is some kind of understanding, I think, that is required about all the different roles within the aircraft, right? So do you want to just quickly tell us about those?
So yeah, in a airplane, there's two pilots. Both of them are fully qualified to fly that airplane. There's no question of pilot or co-pilot. There is, however, ranks. So we have a captain who's in command of the airplane. Then we have a second in command who is the first officer. And in the back of the airplane, in the cabin, you have a purser and many cabin crew. So the team works together and the captain is in charge. And that's pretty much how it works. So there is no pilot or co-pilot anymore. That said, one of the very common questions I used to be asked, like especially earlier when I was flying with my previous company and I was flying cargo, people used to approach me and ask me like, so when will they let you fly commercial? And I always thought it was odd. But then the understanding that people have is that, okay, you are flying boxes because they don't trust you yet.
With people?
With people, which is totally not true. Yeah, you fly people, cargo, horses, whatever it is. It is exactly the same skill set that you require to fly that airplane. So,
Speaking of flying cargo, what's something very unique that you have flown?
actually, horses. I flew horses once from Chicago to Shannon. It was the Sheikh's horses. They were going for training, I think. And I think I had like 34 horses. And from what we calculated, those horses were worth more than the airplane only.
Gosh, so they do trust you with a whole lot on cargo, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
Now, you've done, of course, flights all over the world. You've traveled to countries all over the world. Here's another FAQ for you, and I know a lot of people want to know. Have you visited pretty much every country, or are there countries you yet to fly to?
Oh, there's plenty that I have not flown to. I think most of South America is still unexplored as far as I'm concerned. Also, Africa, many countries in Africa I haven't flown to. So, yeah, the list is too long.
I always feel like when I want to do holidays together with you, I want both of us to explore a place together for the first time. But that list is, while that list is pretty long for me, it's very short for you. There's very few countries that you haven't been to on a layover, on a flight. What is it like for you? Do you get visas or easily? How does that work for you?
No, actually, when you travel as a crew, you don't need visas for most countries. A few countries do require visas to be pre approved, but generally, you fly on a crew permit, and so you land there as a crew and you have like a temporary permit to actually stay there for a specific period of time. And I mean, yeah, there's many countries that I've been to, but we do end up largely taking rest when we go there. We are resting to fly back. So it's not the same like going on a holiday. And also, we'll be in some major city and we'll be in a hotel. So the sights that you'd want to see during a holiday is not something that we always get to see. So yeah, that list for us to explore is still pretty long.
I like that. So let's go back to flying school days. Tell us about some of your, tell us, share some anecdotes from there. Tell us some stories from there.
There's way too many stories, but one of the most significant moments that I had from flying school is my first solo. And early in your flight training, you're always flying with an instructor, and he's there to take over in case you goof up. But at some point, you do your first solo, and that it's you in the airplane flying all by yourself. And I remember the first time I flew, and it just brought this smile to my face. And that was I think, one of the most significant moments in my flight training. I'll never forget that day. It was a clear blue sky morning in Phoenix, Arizona. Fantastic day.
Oh my gosh, the only thing I can compare this to, and it's really a huge step down, but the first time you're on that bicycle and no one's holding you and you're doing it on your own, or when you're in the pool in the deep end and you're actually swimming and it's working. That's the extent of it for me. But one can only imagine the sense of freedom that you might have felt at that point. How old were you then?
I was 18. I was
That's
18
it?
and a few months. It's exactly the same feeling, It's funny you should bring up the bicycle, but I remember sitting there and smiling and thinking, "Oh my god, I'm doing this. I'm doing it." Which is exactly what we feel when we are on this bike as well. So it's amazing.
So you mentioned that there's so many stories, but this is a podcast, and this is where we share pretty much anything we'd like to. So let's deep dive into some of those stories. So who's been your roommates? I know you've got some pretty incredible roommate stories as well at that point. So you started flying when you were 18. You started the training, and for how many years were you there?
Well, the training itself was only for about 9 months.
Okay.
And then I worked as a flight instructor and I instructed for the next 4 years before heading back to India. So, yeah, the instructor journey was a very different sort of flying. It's where I think you build your hours, your confidence, your skills, all of it, because you just need to bring everything together.
So does that help you land your next job?
Yeah, so in aviation, basically, the number of hours you have is what matters. Different airlines have different requirements. So the more experience you have, the more hours you have, the better job you're going to land. Or at least you will be meeting requirements for more airlines. That's how it works. We build experience one way or the other. In my case, I was a flight instructor, and that's how I built my experience. And I love teaching. That's what I realized from that stint.
If you had to redo everything, is there anything that you do differently? I know that there's one particular incident where you did something that you were not supposed to do.
Many.
Many.
Yeah, that's how you learn. You make mistakes, you learn. It's just like a bicycle, right? You fall, you learn. Except, yeah, you have an instructor with you, so he's going to make sure you're not really falling. But yeah, there's many instances. I know that I learned more from my failures than when everything went smoothly. So those are definitely, what taught me. And I think you need to have a certain type of teacher who's going to let you make that mistake. So I've had many landings early in my career where I've just absolutely smashed it on the runway. And it simply taught me that, okay, let me not do that again. And I think that was all thanks to my lovely instructor.
You had obviously made friends in your training days. And I remember actually you telling me this interesting anecdote about how when you started the training, there were how many students in your class?
36 approximately, yeah.
And towards the end of those 9 months, how many of you actually graduated?
I think there was only like 7 of us that actually graduated. Most of the students dropped out at various stages for different reasons. So yeah, it's challenging. You have to sort of persevere through the course to actually make it through. It was kind of like a wake up call for me because everyone around me was people who had worked for years to save money and then sort of fulfill their dream to become a pilot. And there I was, 18 years old. My parents had foot the bill and sent me off to pursue my dream. So I realized that this was a gift and I cannot waste this opportunity. So it definitely made me more serious. I got into studying a little bit more seriously, and yeah, I am thankful and eternally grateful to them for it.
That realization, did that change anything for you? Did anything change in the way that things were being done?
Yeah, definitely. Like once I was done with my training and I was working as a flight instructor, I also needed to pay the bills, and I did not want to be dependent on my parents anymore. So on the side, I was doing a job as a waiter in a restaurant, and I remember the first time I went in. It was my first job actually, and I remember just driving past this restaurant which said "Help Wanted," and I decided to walk in there, and I didn't know how to ask for a job.
You needed help.
Yeah, I was so scared. I walked in there and I sat down like a customer and I ordered for a dosa. It was a South Indian restaurant. And I quietly ate the dosa. While I'm eating the dosa, I'm trying to muster up courage to, ask. So then I go up to pay the bill. And I'm like, so I saw the sign outside. And the lady was like, yeah, this is the job and this is how much you get. I was like, okay, when can I start? So that was my first job, waiting tables in an Indian restaurant on Bell Road in the middle of Phoenix. And I did that for some time, and that's how I paid my bills. So I'd fly early in the morning before the restaurant opened and come quickly, do a little bit of work here, and then again after lunch, go fly a little bit more, then come back and work the rest of the evening. So it was a long day, but it put food on the table.
Now, speaking of food on the table, I'm reminded of this story that you've often told me about Amma and how she would give you and your siblings, your three of you, and she'd give you all tasks to do, and at the end of the task, she'd give you a nice plate of hot food.
Yeah, that was our reward.
So tell us about that, and then tell us about how that impacted you, or what that did when you were an adult. How that played out in your life.
Yeah, that's actually a very good story because growing up, we were a very middle class family, so we did everything on our own. We did not have any help. So each of us were given a task to complete. Like, okay, you do the vacuuming, one person does the ironing of the clothes, and etc. So we always thought like, okay, what is this? Mom's making us do all of this work, and at the end of it, we'd sit down, have a nice meal. And then fast forward years later, I was in my own apartment doing exactly the same thing. And, I'd vacuum the whole house and then realize at the end of it that, okay, there's no one to give me a pat on the back. I better make my own food. So that's when I remembered what mom had taught me and how I missed having, that love from mom. So yeah, it was eye opening for sure.
Now, the friends that you made in those days, are they still pilots, all of them?
Most of them are still flying, yeah, and all over the globe. A few of them actually here in UAE. That's nice. I get to meet some of them after years and years and years. And we've traveled the world and seen so many other jobs and scenarios and different airports, and we get to share all of that together even today. But I remember my first roommate, and this was literally a few days after I had moved into my dorm, and and I'm like miles away from India. So I am expecting a very different kind of environment. I walk into my apartment and I see my roommate. And guess what? He's a Sardarji. And his name was Parminder Singh Grul. And the first thing he said shocked me because he spoke with a British accent. Satellite dish. That's what he said. So yeah, it was a bit of a shocker for me, and but then I realized, okay, this is a new world, and yeah, we're still in touch, and it's nice to have friends from so many years ago.
You mentioned earlier that, you were telling me us an incident and you said that was before 9/11. What changed with 9/11?
I mean, a lot changed. I mean, the rules and regulations for employment, of course, everything changed, especially in the U.S. That obviously made job opportunities a little hard to come by. It had its effect on aviation, but it was only short lived. I think in a few years, slowly there was recovery. Aviation was booming, especially back in India. I mean, if anything, I think I returned back maybe 6 months too early. So I didn't quite see the boom, but I was very happy that I was able to land a job when I got back home.
In India, you were working with Blue Dart.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
didn't know that Blue Dart had airplanes.
Yes.
I
Most
mean,
people don't. Yes.
right? So I've grown up in India, in Mumbai, and Blue Dart. Yeah, of course, I know the courier company, but I did not know about this whole flying aspect to it. Did you also discover this when you went back to India, or for you, it was always something that because you guys discussed jobs, so you always knew about it?
No, I didn't really know about Blue Dart until I came to India. And yeah, in fact, their corporate headquarters is in Bombay only. And while everyone is sleeping quietly, not so quietly, we make a little bit of noise with those jet airplanes, but we are hopping from one city to the other, delivering your packages.
What's the most number of cities you've stopped at in one night?
In one night, 5 cities.
Wow.
Yeah. So if we start from Chennai, we go from Chennai to Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, and we'll stop at the end of that. But there have been times when, because of fog, we've not been able to land, so we end up going to a different airport, which means we have to do one more sector once the fog clears out. And yeah, so that makes it 5. And that's the most I've ever done. And it is tiring. Flying all night is not easy.
Yeah, certainly none of it is easy. But what is a difficult landing that you remember having done in your career?
See, I mean, especially in India during the monsoons, you have lots of weather, so it's a constantly changing environment. And yeah, flying into Bombay with heavy rains, it's quite challenging. But I think the worst experience that I've had was actually out of Calcutta, and it was on a takeoff. And it was one of these days, monsoons. It had been raining nonstop for like 2 days. Just as we took off, one of my air data computers failed, and so we started getting spurious warnings. And this was just after liftoff. So all the instruments were showing wrong information, and we were in the middle of weather. So it was definitely something that was counterintuitive. I had to sort of not rely on my instincts and focus on what I'm seeing in front of me. And yeah, the both my first officer and I together, we managed to handle that airplane really well that day and fly out of it. That was definitely the most hairy moment for me so far.
When passengers get on an airplane, I think all of us want to avoid feeling turbulence, and because it just creates a lot of panic, really. Break that down for us. Break, the situation in the cockpit down for us during turbulence.
See, it's very simple. I use this rule of thumb. If it feels like a train, it's okay.
I mean, when we're sitting at the back,
Yeah,
feel
if
like a
you are
train.
sitting there and it's rocking like it's a your local train.
Ah, got it. Okay.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's better to be strapped in because the reality of it is the air is constantly moving. You are going to experience some level of, bumps. That said, it is very serious. When the seatbelt sign is on, it means that there is some turbulence that's expected and it could be, quite severe. So it's important for you to sort of follow the instructions that are being given to you and strap in. That's the safest thing you can do. However bad the turbulence gets, the airplane is designed to withstand it. So the harm that you're going to do is only by not strapping in, you could bump into something, you could bang your head somewhere, etc. So anytime it's bumpy, just strap in, enjoy the movie. That's it.
So a lot of us, we come from India, and a lot of us believe that it's an Indian thing to, as soon as the plane has touched the runway, where our seatbelts are off and we're ready with getting our bags out of there. We want to be the first ones out of immigration and get out of the airport, right? Is it just an India thing?
Absolutely not. I think it's a human thing. As soon as you hear that click, it doesn't matter where in the world you are, the whole lot will open their seatbelts and start jumping out of their seats. It's happened all the time. I mean, I've had to, make PAs to say, hey guys, please remain seated because we have not reached our parking spot yet.
Why is it important, though, for passenger safety to be buckled in all the way to the parking spot? Because once you've landed, after that, it's pretty much now it's just going to the parking lot. No, now what is the need?
Yeah, it's the same thing like buckling in when you're in your car, because once you've landed, now it's a car. And as you know, for safety, you must always have your seatbelts on. And if we are going to brake suddenly, for whatever reason, I mean, sometimes you have a little, in some countries, you can have like dogs crossing the taxiway.
Really?
You never know. So if you have to brake suddenly and you're standing, you're going to fall and that's going to hurt you. So, it's important until the airplane is fully stationary and that seatbelt sign is switched off, remain seated. There's nowhere you can go, anyways. The doors are closed.
Yeah, this is true. They are closed. You often talk to me about the storms that you fly through, right? Are all storms the same level or some less scary, some more?
No, actually, firstly, we try and fly around the storms.
Huh.
We don't want to fly into the storm. Sometimes there is a case where there's no way for us to go around it. It is so big. So then we find, the least, strong area and try to penetrate through it. But it's definitely something that we are concerned about too, because, the storms they have various things: lightning, hail, turbulence. These are all things that are going to affect the airplane, and at no point do we want the passengers to feel any of it. So yeah, we'll avoid it by hundreds of miles if we need to.
And you always have enough fuel to do these
That's the
things?
tricky bit. We don't always have the fuel, so we rely a lot on forecasts to be accurate. And in today's day and age, they are pretty accurate. So we're able to plan accordingly and have everything as required.
One of my favorite flying movies has to be Airplane. I love watching it. I remember watching it actually on TikTok. It was popping up a lot on my feed, like just scenes from it. And I remember showing you saying, "What is this movie? I want to watch it." And you actually had it with you.
Yes, I have it on DVD.
Gosh. I mean, Airplane, of course, is hilarious and it's meant to be inaccurate and all of
It
that.
is one of those inaccurate movies that you can enjoy watching.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
But when you're watching a movie about, pilots or flying, whether it's from India or from anywhere else in the world, really, what are some very like over the top mistakes that you're like, come on, guys, this also you didn't get right?
Yeah, one of the most common mistakes that they make is just how that cockpit looks. They'll show an image of two pilots sitting in front of what looks like one cardboard thingy with squares, and it has nothing to do with a real airplane. And you know straight away, okay, that's not real. And in some movies they do get it accurate, but some other things like the actions that are done, the instructions that are given, they are all wrong. wrong for the wrong moment. And yeah, it's a little putting off for a person who understands how it works. I'm sure it's the same for you in showbiz, like when you can see something is not being done the way it's supposed to.
Few movies about radio presenters, and it feels like they're always a little over the top excited at like 7 in the morning, and it's like, okay, that would be very annoying. So yeah, I know what you're saying. Is Sully your favorite flying movie?
I'll say it is one of the most accurate flying movies. So yes, it's definitely one I'll watch time and again. But there is also another very inaccurate movie which I will watch a million times, and that's Top Gun. Every pilot out there, I know you're going to be watching Top Gun,
Yeah, what
but
is it? What is
but
it with pilots and Top Gun? Please
I
explain
don't
this.
know. It's just exhilarating. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's just I think something that we grew up with. At least that generation. I don't know about the new generation whether they still have the same feeling, but definitely from my generation, we spoke. It's like Shah Rukh Khan dialogues. We
Huh.
spoke Tom Cruise dialogues from Top Gun.
Yeah, I think you all still do. It doesn't work anymore though.
Yeah, no one knows what we're talking about.
And that's the other thing, right? So when you're with your buddies, is everything you discuss to do with flying?
Yeah, most often we do. I mean, it somehow just comes back to that. That we end up talking about something related to flying or the other. So, yeah, I think it's how we relate with each other. I mean, most of my friends are pilots. So it's a given that we're going to end up talking about shop.
And when you meet someone who's not from the world of flying, what is the first thing you get asked?
Do you get free tickets?
And do you?
No, we get one a year.
And buddy tickets, can you just hand these out? How does it work?
No, it depends on the company, and each company has their own policy. And no, the answer is simply you can't just hand them out. Most often, you will have a limited number of seats that you can give away. And yeah, depending on your company, maybe or maybe not.
Something that I am very, very impressed by with the way that your career goes is that you don't bring work home. I regularly bring work home, and you hardly ever do that. How are you able to do that?
Because I can't bring my airplane home. It's parked in the airport. Finished.
Yeah, but I can't bring my radio station home either. When you turn off the engine, what happens?
I'm switched off. That's it. Actually, good thing you talked about turning off the engines. That literally is when we stop, thinking a certain way. And so after we've parked, we've gotten out of that airplane. There's really not much for us to do with regard to the work. So we're able to just switch off and focus fully on what's happening at home. And then when you start to prepare for your next flight, that's when you get back into the groove again and start thinking differently. And once again in the airplane, like I told you earlier, takeoff and landing, everything else gets switched off and you just focus. I think focus is the number one thing that this profession teaches you to have discipline to do, every single time. So yeah.
What's something that you've learned from your career, and you have magnified it in your personal life? Very often with you, everything comes down to, so here's how we do things in flying, and then I'll be discussing, whatever issues I'm going through, and Chandran be telling me, in flying, this is what happens. Why don't you give us some of those?
See, I mean, I can't get examples off the top of my head, but some of the, qualities that go into piloting an airplane, which is like decision making and problem solving, workload management. These are things that we use daily, continuously in the work environment. And the reality of it is, if you can apply some of that in your personal life, workload management, for example, trying to divide tasks based on priority, delaying one thing versus expediting one, you just apply it in personal life as well, and largely it seems to work. So why do it any other way? So we do switch off from work, but we bring along with us all the the qualities that are necessary to do that job.
Working under stress, right? You guys work under high pressure environment.
Yes. And this is very funny to me because we will make split second decisions in that airplane when we need to. But I'll go to the local spinnies and stand in front of the ice cream aisle wondering which one to pick for hours. And that's just something I'm sure a lot of you can relate to it.
Well, I think OB has decided this podcast needs to end right here, right now. That, by the way, is our 15-year-old beautiful, beautiful boy. He's a bit of a gunda. That's what I like to point out. But he's Chandran's longtime companion.
Yeah, this guy is Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's been with me from Chennai and then Bangalore and moved with me to Dubai. And yeah, he's been here all along. He's been through some crazy times as well.
Well, we hope that you'll come back and we'll do maybe one episode with the dogs, you, me, and Lucky and Obi.
Obi, I think they want you back.
Yeah, all right.
Can you say, hey, Karish?
Can you tell them to subscribe to this channel, Obi? Baby, I'm telling you, he's very cute. Turn him towards the camera, they'll subscribe.
Okay. Here we go.
I think you're still going to have to do the talking now.
I thought this was enough. Yes, we'll be back soon for sure.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Hey Karish. We're going to see you once again next week with another guest. And of course, thank you, Chandran, for taking the time out. And if you hadn't, I would have put you out on the sofa, so you had no option.
Pleasure to be here.
Of course, if you have any questions, then you can go ahead and put them in the comments and we will make sure that we bring Chandran back again to take your questions.
Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel.